The grand chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Ambassador Yuna had ever seen. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of seats rose in circles around the central platform, filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like nothing Yuna could describe with words. All of them were looking at her. She stood alone on the speaking platform, a single human woman in a simple black uniform. Behind her, in the observation gallery, Admiral Doyon watched with his hands folded behind his back. His face showed nothing, but his eyes never left the council members above. High Chancellor Varel sat on the highest throne. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he looked down at the human ambassador. To him, she was small. To him, she was unimportant. He had already made his decision before she even started speaking. The Terran Union formally requests elevation to full member status, Yuna said. Her voice was calm and clear. For 50 years, humanity has served this council. We have kept our promises. We have shared our knowledge. We have protected your borders and healed your sick. We believe we have earned the right to stand as equals among you. She paused and looked around the chamber. Most of the council members were not even paying attention. Some were talking quietly to each other. Some were looking at their communication devices. Only a few actually met her eyes. Councillor Tehran of the Keth Dominion stood up. He was a large creature with 4 arms and skin like rough stone. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. 50 years? He laughed. 50 years is nothing. My species has been part of this council for 12,000 years. The humans are children playing at being adults. They fight wars among themselves. They nearly destroyed their own planet before they even reached the stars. And now, they want to sit among us as equals? Several council members made sounds of agreement. Tehran continued, his voice growing louder. I have read human history. It is filled with blood and fire. They killed each other over the color of their skin. They killed each other over which invisible god they believed in. They built weapons that could destroy their entire world and then pointed those weapons at each other. These are not the actions of a mature species. These are the actions of dangerous animals. Yuna stood perfectly still. Her face did not change. In the gallery, Admiral Doyon noticed that her hands were not shaking. They were completely steady. He had served with her for 20 years, and he knew what that stillness meant. She was not afraid. She was not angry. She had simply stopped hoping. High Chancellor Varel raised one of his long fingers. The council will now vote on the matter of human elevation. The vote took less than a minute. 11 species voted against. 1 species abstained. None voted in favor. Varel smiled, though it was not a kind smile. The request is denied. Humanity will remain a probationary species. Perhaps in another 50 years, you will have proven yourselves worthy. You may respond, Ambassador. The chamber fell silent. Everyone expected the human to argue. They expected her to beg, to plead, to demand justice. Some of them were looking forward to watching her breakdown. It would be entertaining to see the proud human finally accept her place. Yuna bowed her head slightly. The Terran Union thanks the Council for their time, she said. We understand your decision. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. She did not look back. She did not say another word. Councillor Tehran laughed. Look at her run away. I told you they were cowards at heart. But Elder Nex of the Thal Ascendancy did not laugh. He was the oldest member of the council, so old that no one remembered exactly how many centuries he had lived. His species had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched 100 civilizations burn themselves out. And right now, watching the human ambassador walk away in silence, Elder Nex felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt afraid. This is wrong, he said quietly. But no one heard him over the sounds of laughter and self-congratulation filling the chamber. Admiral Doyon met Ambassador Yuna in the corridor outside. She looked at him with eyes that held no tears, no anger, no disappointment. There was only a calm certainty that Doyon recognized immediately. "It is done then," he said. It was not a question. "Oh, it is done," she replied. "Send the signal. Protocol quiet departure is now in effect." Doya nodded once. He pulled out his communication device and typed a single code. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 human ships and stations and colonies, that code was received. Every human who saw it understood what it meant. They were going home. All of them. And they were not coming back. Back in the Grand Chamber. High Chancellor Varel was accepting congratulations from the other council members. "We have shown the humans their place," he said proudly. "They will learn humility. In time, they will thank us for this lesson." Arbiter Myra of the Orin Collective was not celebrating. She had watched the human ambassador's face carefully during the entire proceeding. She had seen something that troubled her deeply. When a species begged and pleaded, it meant they still had hope. When a species screamed and threatened, it meant they still cared. But Ambassador Yuna had done neither. She had simply accepted the decision and walked away. That kind of silence was not weakness. That kind of silence was the sound of a door closing forever. Myra looked around at her fellow council members, laughing and joking as if they had won some great victory. She wanted to warn them. She wanted to tell them that they had made a terrible mistake, but she knew they would not listen. They were too proud, too certain of their own superiority, so Myra said nothing. And in the corridor outside, a human admiral sent a message that would change the galaxy forever. The message contained only 2 words: begin withdrawal. No one on the council noticed. They were too busy celebrating. They would not be celebrating for long. The withdrawal began quietly. So quietly that at first no one noticed. On the medical station, orbiting the planet Keth Prime, Dr. Hannah finished treating her last patient. The alien child had been born with a heart defect that would have killed him within a year. Human surgeons had developed a technique to fix this problem decades ago. It took Dr. Hannah 3 hours to complete the operation. When she was finished, the child would live a full and healthy life. His mother wept with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, gripping Dr. Hannah's hands. "How can we ever repay you?" Dr. Hannah smiled gently. "Take care of your son. That is all I ask." She did not tell the mother that she was leaving. She did not explain that every human doctor on the station had already packed their belongings. She simply completed her work, handed over all her medical files to the alien staff, and walked to the transport ship waiting in the docking bay. The other human doctors were already there. None of them spoke. There was nothing to say. They had given 50 years of their lives to healing aliens who would never see them as equals. Now they were going home. Across the galaxy. The same scene repeated itself 1,000 times. Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of the warship Silent Dawn, looking out at the stars of the Outer Rim. For 40 years, human ships had patrolled this sector. They had fought pirates, rescued stranded vessels, and kept the trade routes safe. It was dangerous, thankless work. Many human soldiers had died protecting alien merchants who barely acknowledged their sacrifice. "All ships have reported in, Captain," his second officer said. "The fleet is ready to withdraw." Taiho nodded slowly. "Leave the automated warning beacons. Program them to broadcast on all frequencies." "What message, sir?" Taiho thought for a moment. "The Terran Union wishes the Council prosperity. We will no longer be patrolling this sector. Safe travels," was a polite message. A kind message. Far kinder than the aliens deserved. But that was the human way. Even when walking away, they would not be cruel. The Silent Dawn and its escort ships turned toward home. Behind them, the Outer Rim fell silent. For the first time in 4 decades, no human vessels guarded the space lanes. The pirates hiding in the asteroid fields could not believe their luck. General Wujin personally oversaw the most important phase of the withdrawal. Deep in a secret facility, on a human colony world, engineers worked around the clock to shut down the Harmony Network. The network was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. It was a system of sensors and satellites that covered almost all of Council space. It could detect asteroid threats years in advance. It could spot hostile fleet movements before they became dangerous. It had saved billions of lives without anyone ever knowing it existed. Now it was going dark. "Are you sure about this, General?" one of the engineers asked. "Without the network, they will be blind. People will die." Eugene's face was hard as stone. "I am sure. They told us we were not worthy of standing beside them. Let them stand alone and see how they like it." One by one, the satellites stopped transmitting. The great web of protection that humanity had built over decades went silent. In the council chambers, no alarms sounded. No warnings appeared. The aliens had never even known the network existed. They would not know it was gone until it was too late. On Villar Prime, Arbiter Mira found Ambassador Yuna at the human embassy. Workers were packing everything into crates. The walls were bare. The furniture was being loaded onto transport ships. "You are truly leaving," Mira said. It was not a question. "We are," Yuna replied. She was folding a flag, the blue and green banner of Earth. She handled it with great care. "This is not right. What the council did to you was not right." Yuna looked up at the alien woman. "I know, but we are tired of fighting for respect that should be freely given. We have decided to stop asking for what others refuse to give." Mira stepped closer. "Then fight. Demand justice. Make them listen." "Why?" Yuna asked gently. "We have been asking for 50 years. They have shown us exactly what they think of us. We finally believe them." She finished folding the flag and placed it carefully in a case. Then she looked at Mira with sad, knowing eyes. "We offered our hands in friendship. We shared our medicine, our technology, our soldiers. We gave everything we had to give, and in return, they called us savages. They called us children. They laughed at us in their grand chamber." She shook her head slowly. "We cannot make them respect us, but we can stop pretending that their disrespect does not hurt. We can stop giving gifts to those who spit on us. We can walk away with our dignity intact. But we need you," Mira whispered. "Why?" UNA smiled, but it was a smile full of sorrow. "Yes, you do. But you never treated us like you did. That is the tragedy, Arbiter. You never realized how much you needed us until we decided to leave." The last transport ship lifted off from Villar Prime 3 days later. Mira watched it rise into the sky and disappear among the stars. All across the galaxy, human ships were doing the same thing. Rising up, flying away, going home. The council received reports, of course. They knew the humans were withdrawing. But they did not understand what it meant. High Chancellor Vrel dismissed the reports with a wave of his hand. "They will come crawling back within a month. They need us more than we need them." The other council members nodded in agreement. Of course the humans would come back. Where else would they go? What would they do without the mighty Galactic Council? They truly believed this. They believed it with all their hearts. They were about to learn how wrong they were, and by the time they understood their mistake, it would be far too late to fix it. 6 months passed, and the galaxy began to fall apart. It started slowly, like a crack in a great dam. Small problems became big problems. Big problems became disasters. And through it all, the silence from human space was deafening. The first crisis came from the Outer Rim, without human patrols. The pirates grew bold. They emerged from their hiding places in the asteroid fields and began attacking trade convoys. At first it was just small ships, then it was larger vessels, then entire fleets. Councillor Torrens stood before the Keth Dominion's military command screaming at his generals. "How is this possible? We have the largest fleet in the sector." "The humans handled the patrol routes, Counselor," one general explained nervously. "They knew every ambush point, every hiding place. They had 40 years of experience. We are starting from nothing." 12 cargo ships were lost in a single month. The economy of 3 Keth colonies began to collapse. Citizens who had never thought about humans before suddenly wondered why their food shipments were not arriving. But the pirates were only the beginning. On the planet Orin 7, plague broke out. It was a mutation of an old virus, one that human medical teams had been monitoring for years. Dr. Hannah had written a report about it just before leaving, warning that it could become dangerous if left unchecked. The report sat unread in a computer system that no one checked anymore. The plague spread fast. Alien doctors worked desperately to find a cure, but they did not have the human research. They did not have the human databases. They did not have the human techniques that had been developed over decades of fighting. Similar diseases, millions died in the first wave. Millions more died in the second. By the time a cure was finally found, entire cities had been emptied. The survivors looked at the sky and wondered why no human medical ships came to help them. No. Ships came because no one had asked for help. And even if they had asked, the humans had made their position clear. They were no longer responsible for saving people who considered them lesser beings. The greatest disaster came 6 months after the withdrawal. A Thal astronomer noticed a bright dot moving across the night sky. He tracked it for 3 days before he understood what he was seeing. An asteroid. A big one. Big enough to destroy all life on a planet. It was heading straight for Counselor Turan's homeworld in the old days. The Harmony Network would have detected this asteroid 5 years in advance. There would have been plenty of time to change its path. But the network was dark now. The satellites that once watched the skies were silent and cold. The Thal astronomer calculated the time until impact. 18 months. It was not enough time. Not nearly enough time. Panic spread across the planet. Millions tried to flee, but there were not enough ships. The spaceports became war zones as people fought for passage off-world. The government declared martial law. But it was too late to restore order. High Chancellor Varel sat in his private chamber, staring at the emergency reports piling up on his desk. Trade routes collapsing. Plague spreading. An asteroid threatening to kill billions. And through it all, not a single human ship had appeared to help. He activated his communication system and recorded a message to the Terran Union. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "This is High Chancellor Varel of the Galactic Council. We are experiencing some difficulties and would appreciate human assistance on a temporary basis. Please respond at your earliest convenience." The response came 3 days later. It was short. Terran Union appreciates the Council's communication. We wish you success in your endeavors. That was all. No ships, no doctors, no soldiers. Just a polite message that said, in the kindest possible way, that humanity was not coming to help. Vrel read the message again and again, trying to understand. This was not how things were supposed to work. The humans were supposed to come back. They were supposed to need the Council. They were supposed to beg for another chance. Instead, they had simply walked away and left the Council to face the darkness alone. Elder Nex requested an emergency session of the Council. His voice echoed through the grand chamber, filled with fury that made the younger members shrink back in fear. "I warned you," he said, pointing a trembling finger at his fellow council members. "I warned all of you. The humans did not need us. We needed them. And you drove them away with your pride and your arrogance." Counselor Turan tried to argue. "They are just one species. We have 12 member races. We do not need—" "Look around you," Elder Nex shouted. "Your trade routes are burning. Your people are dying of plague. An asteroid is about to destroy your homeworld. And where are the humans who solved these problems for 50 years? They are gone. Because you told them they were not worthy of standing beside us." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the council members began to understand the size of their mistake. Warlord Kess of the Bryn Hegemony sat quietly in his seat. He had not spoken during the meeting, but his mind was racing. His military had lost 3 battles in the past month. 3 battles against enemies that should have been easy to defeat. He finally understood why. His generals had become dependent on human tactical advisors. They had forgotten how to think for themselves. And now the advisors were gone. Looking around the chamber at the frightened faces of his fellow council members, Kess realized a terrible truth. They had all become dependent on humanity, in ways large and small, visible and invisible. The humans had been holding the galaxy together, and now the humans were gone. The silence from human space continued. Weeks turned into months. The council sent more messages, each one more desperate than the last. The responses were always the same, polite, brief, and utterly final. Humanity was not angry. They were not seeking revenge. They had simply moved on. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. 1 year after the withdrawal, High Chancellor Vrel made a decision that would have been unthinkable before. He would go to Earth himself. He would beg if he had to. The survival of the council depended on bringing the humans back. His personal ship crossed into human space without incident. No weapons were aimed at him. No threats were made. The humans simply guided his vessel to a docking port and welcomed him aboard a space station orbiting. Earth Admiral Do Yan met him at the airlock. The human was older now, with gray in his hair, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Hi, Chancellor," Do Yan said with a polite bow. "Welcome to Terran space. I trust your journey was comfortable." Vrel looked around the station and felt his heart sink. Everything he saw was beautiful and advanced. The walls were smooth and white. The air was clean and fresh. Machines hummed quietly, doing work that Vrel could not even understand. This technology was decades ahead of anything the council possessed. "You have been busy," Vrel said quietly. "We have," Do Yan agreed. "Please, follow me. Ambassador Yuna is waiting." He walked through corridors filled with humans going about their daily lives. No one stared at the alien visitor. No one showed fear or anger. They simply nodded politely and continued on their way. It was as if an alien High Chancellor visiting their station was the most normal thing in the world. Vrel realized something that made his stomach turn. The humans had moved on. They had built new lives, new projects, new dreams. They were not sitting in darkness, waiting for the council to take them back. They were thriving. Ambassador Yuna received him in a conference room with large windows overlooking Earth. The blue and green planet rotated slowly below, wrapped in white clouds. Vrel had seen many worlds in his long life, but Earth was genuinely beautiful. "High Chancellor," Yuna said, rising from her seat. She was dressed simply, but she carried herself like a queen. "Please, sit. Would you like something to drink?" Vrel sat down heavily. He had prepared a long speech full of diplomatic language and careful phrases. But looking at Yuna's calm face, he knew that such tricks would be useless here. "We made a mistake," he said simply. "A terrible mistake. The council was arrogant and foolish, and we have paid dearly for our pride." Yuna nodded but said nothing. "We need your help," Vrel continued. "The Outer Rim is in chaos. Disease is spreading across multiple worlds. An asteroid threatens to destroy billions, and we cannot solve these problems alone." He reached into his robes and pulled out a document. "I am authorized to offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Council, a permanent seat, complete equality with all other member species. We will also pay reparations for the decades of disrespect you have endured." He placed the document on the table and pushed it toward Yuna. "Please, come back to us." Yuna looked at the document for a long moment. Then she looked up at Vrel with eyes that held no anger, no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a deep and weary sadness. "1 year ago, this offer would have meant everything to us," she said softly. "We would have celebrated in the streets. We would have wept with joy. Full membership was all we ever wanted." She pushed the document back across the table. "But that was 1 year ago. Things have changed." Vrel stared at her in disbelief. "You are refusing?" "I am explaining," Yuna said. "For 50 years we served the council faithfully. We asked only to be treated as equals. We were refused again and again. We were insulted, mocked, and dismissed. And through it all, we kept serving. We kept hoping. We kept believing that someday you would see us for who we truly are." She stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. That day in the Grand Chamber, when Counselor Torin called us savages, something broke inside us. Not our pride, not our spirit, our hope. We finally accepted that you would never see us as equals. You would only see what you wanted to see. Admiral Do Yan spoke for the first time. "So we stopped trying to change your minds. We stopped giving gifts to those who saw them as obligations rather than kindness. We came home and started building something new. Rel stood up, desperation in his voice. But people are dying. Billions will die if that asteroid strikes. Surely you cannot just stand by and watch. We are not standing by, Yuna said, turning to face him. We have sent ships to help evacuate refugees from the asteroid's path. We have shared our medical research with any planet that requested it directly. We have offered sanctuary to any species that wishes to leave Council space. She walked back to the table and sat down. We will not return to the Council. We will not pretend that the last 50 years did not happen. We will not accept a seat at a table where we were told we did not belong. Rel's hands were shaking. Then what do you want? Name your price. Anything, Admiral Doyon answered. We wanted respect, Chancellor. Just respect. And you showed us that we would never receive it. So now we walk our own path. We help those who ask for help. We welcome those who treat us as equals. But we do not beg for acceptance anymore. The meeting ended shortly after. As Vrel was escorted back to his ship, he passed through a section of the station where human children were playing. A young teacher named Mingi noticed him and bowed politely. Her students, seeing her example, bowed as well. It was such a simple gesture. Such basic courtesy. The kind of respect that cost nothing to give but meant everything to receive, Vrel realized. In that moment, the true depth of the Council's failure. The humans had never wanted power or wealth or dominion. They had only wanted to be treated with the same simple courtesy that a teacher showed her students and the Council. In its infinite arrogance, had refused even that. Vrel returned to Council space, a broken man. He had no good news to share. The humans were not coming back. They had built a new future without the Council, and they were happy. The grand chamber that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense was now filled with silence. A terrible, suffocating silence. The same silence that humanity had offered them 1 year ago. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy was not the same place it had been before. The Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former glory. 3 of the original 12-member species had collapsed into civil war or been conquered by outside forces. High Chancellor Vrel had resigned in disgrace, disappearing to some remote world where no one would recognize him. The great chambers where proud aliens once mocked humanity now sat half empty, filled with frightened leaders who no longer knew how to solve their own problems. Counselor Turan's homeworld had survived the asteroid, but only barely. In the end, it was not the Council that saved them. It was a private human engineering company that agreed to redirect the asteroid. The price was enormous. The Keth Dominion paid it without argument. They had no choice. The asteroid mission was led by Captain Taiho, now retired from military service and working as a civilian contractor. He stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the massive rock change course, slowly moving away from the populated planet. Behind him, his crew cheered. The Keth government is sending a message of thanks, his communications officer reported. Taiho nodded. Acknowledge it politely. Nothing more. There was no satisfaction in saving people who had treated his species like dirt. But there was no cruelty either. The humans did the job they were paid to do, saved billions of lives, and went home. Professional, courteous, distant. That was the new way. While the Council crumbled, humanity flourished. The Terran Union had expanded into unclaimed space, building colonies on worlds that no one else had wanted. These settlements grew quickly, attracting not just humans but aliens who were tired of Council, politics, and prejudice. They called these territories the free worlds. Anyone could come. Anyone could stay. The only rule was simple. Treat others with respect. And you would be treated with respect in return. Dr. Hannah now ran the largest research hospital in the free worlds. Scientists from a dozen species worked together in her facility, developing cures for diseases and solutions for problems that had seemed impossible before. When she walked through the corridors, she was greeted with smiles and bows from humans and aliens alike. Doctor, one of her alien researchers called out, the new treatment is working. The patients are recovering, Yana smiled. Good work. Make sure to document everything for the next team. This was what she had always wanted. Not fame or glory or council seats, just the chance to heal people who appreciated her help. The chance to work alongside beings who saw her as a colleague, not a servant. Arbiter Mira had left the Oran Collective 2 years after humanity's departure. She could not bear to watch the slow collapse of everything she had believed in. With nowhere else to go, she applied for residency in the free worlds. The approval came within a week. No committees. No waiting periods. No questions about her species or her past. Just a simple welcome letter signed by Ambassador Yuna herself. Mira now worked as a cultural liaison, helping new alien arrivals adjust to life among humans. It was strange at first. Humans did things differently. They said please and thank you constantly. They held doors open for strangers. They asked about your day and actually listened to the answer. Such small things. Such simple courtesies. And yet, after centuries of council politics, these small things felt like miracles. Elder Nex did not live to see the 5th anniversary of humanity's departure. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by students who had loved him. But before he passed, he sent one final message to Admiral Doyan. "You were the test," the message read. "A test of whether the galaxy could recognize goodness when it stood before us. Offering everything and asking only for basic dignity in return. We failed that test. I only hope that future generations will learn from our shame. Perhaps in time, they will become worthy of your friendship." Doyan read the message alone in his office. Then he placed it in a drawer with other letters he had received over the years. Letters from aliens who had realized too late what humanity had offered them. Letters filled with regret and apology and desperate wishes to turn back time. He did not hate the writers of these letters. Hatred required energy, and humanity had better things to do with their energy now. They had worlds to build, children to raise, a future to create. The past was the past. It could not be changed. But the future was still unwritten. On the 5th anniversary of the withdrawal, Ambassador Yuna gave a speech to the people of the free worlds. She stood on a platform overlooking a great plaza filled with humans and aliens standing side by side. Behind her, Earth hung in the sky like a blue jewel. 5 years ago, we made a choice, she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. We chose to stop begging for respect that should have been freely given. We chose to walk away from those who saw our kindness as weakness. We chose to build something new. She paused and looked out at the faces before her. Human faces. Alien faces. All of them watching her with hope and trust. Some called us cowards for leaving. Some called us cruel for refusing to return. But we know the truth. We left because we finally understood that you cannot make someone respect you. You can only choose how to respond when they refuse. She straightened her shoulders and smiled. We chose dignity. We chose self-respect. We chose to find new friends who would see us for who we are, not who they wanted us to be. And look at what we have built together. The crowd began to cheer. Humans and aliens together, united not by politics or power, but by mutual respect. Far away. On Velar Prime, a young alien diplomat approached the Terran embassy. She came from a species that had never been part of the Galactic Council. Her people had watched humanity from afar, amazed at their kindness and horrified by how the Council had treated them. Now, she carried a formal request for alliance. Her hands were trembling as she entered the building. The human receptionist, a young man named Junho, looked up from his desk and smiled warmly. "Welcome," he said. "How can I help you?" "I have a message from my government," she said nervously. "We wish to establish formal relations with the Terran Union." Junho took the document and looked it over. Then he smiled again and gestured to a comfortable chair nearby. "Wonderful. Please, take a seat. Would you like some tea while you wait?" She stared at him in surprise. That was it? No interrogation, no tests, no years of waiting. "Thank you," she managed to say. "Yes, tea would be nice." As she sat down, she looked around the embassy. It was clean and bright and welcoming. Humans and aliens walked past, chatting casually, treating each other as equals. This was what the galaxy could have been all along. This was what the Council had thrown away. She accepted the cup of tea from Junho and wrapped her hands around its warmth. Outside the window, ships came and went, carrying people to new worlds and new possibilities. The old galaxy was dying, but something new was being born in its place, something better. And it had started with a single, simple act. Humanity had walked away in silence, and the silence had changed everything.